welcome back to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show. We're exploring a fascinating topic today, one that's been described as something everyone's doing, but no one's doing right. And that is a hot topic and potentially most talked about buzzword of 2019, AI or artificial intelligence. Today we speak with Moacyr Galo, Chief Technology Innovation Officer and researcher from São Paulo, Brazil, and demystify the current state of play with artificial intelligence. But before we get underway with this, I want to talk to you about MapTasker, a geospatial ISV that I've been working with. When you hear the word geospatial, you think maps, but MapTasker is much more than a mapping visualization tool. MapTasker enables both field and office staff to collaborate effectively through the means of a map, with their field sales for Dynamics 365 and field engineering for Dynamics 365 products. Any business running a field-based team would benefit from better collaboration between field and office staff. MapTasker helps organizations increase productivity while reducing operational costs. If you're ready to embrace the power of geospatial intelligence, MapTasker has use cases from large government and corporate organizations through to small SMEs and charities. So get in touch with them today at maptasker.com. Now, let's get on with the show. Remember, full show notes can be found for this episode at nz365guy.com/109. Moacyr, welcome to the Dynamics 365 show.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to me.
Excellent. Well, first of all, have I got your name right? How do you pronounce your name?
I have a way to teach foreign people to pronounce my name. I know the two vocals together are not easy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's Moacyr.
Moacyr.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect.
Moacyr. Okay. Excellent. So where are you based? What part of the world do you hail from?
Well, actually, I'm based in São Paulo, Brazil, at this moment. But so I don't know if you have information about São Paulo.
No, tell me about it.
So basically, São Paulo is a pretty big city, right? Around 12 million people.
Wow.
Living in the city, and only São Paulo state is around 44 million. And if you compare that to the top 10 European countries, will be between 6 and 7 probably, between Spain and Ukraine, something like that, right? So basically, it's everything happens here in São Paulo in terms of technology, because networking is strong, right? We have everybody here, so Microsoft, Google, SAP, Oracle, everybody's here.
Wow. So tell us about your background, though, from an ERP CRM perspective.
Yeah, so I started my technology career as 17 years old, probably, right? So I've been in the business of ERP and CRM, and I stayed there for more than 20 years. So I started my first business in 1998 as a Solomon reseller. I don't know if you probably you know
SL,
that, right?
SL, yeah. So Dynamics SL Solomon originally, yeah.
Yeah. So after that, when Solomon was acquired by Great Plains, and then Microsoft entered into the game when Microsoft acquired Great Plains. So that's my history with Microsoft.
Wow. Okay, so
yeah, I was one of the first partners to work with CRM in 2003, probably something like that, and that became a leading Dynamics exporter in Brazil until 2014. Right, I had almost 100 people. Right.
Wow.
It was a pretty big, interesting business. And then after that, I started. I navigated to different waters and tested NetSuite also. I started another business with ERP in the cloud, because at that time I really would like to test this. But then sold that company this year, actually. So this year was my last participation in the ERP game.
Wow.
Yeah, but since 2015, I decided to go deeper into this artificial intelligence and machine learning arena, because, honestly, all those years with ERP, I was not that satisfied with the concrete results that I was achieving, right? So I decided to start something more challenging in terms of technology, and since 2015, I've been fully dedicated to understand the AI potential and how that can change companies in the future. So this is what I'm doing since then.
Incredible, incredible. So we're going to drill into that, but tell us, we've spoken in the past about the EU and that market. Can you tell us a bit about Portugal and why is it an exciting proposition right now?
Oh yeah, so I have a plan now, right? And we are moving, but I say global, we are going to open a lab there in Portugal. And why Portugal? If you take a look to the size of the company, it's 10 million people, right? It's almost this size of São Paulo city at this moment. But after the last crisis, so I think that Portugal is, I think it's doing the right track, because the triple helix concept where you have university, industry, and government collaboration.
Yep.
I think that Portugal learned that very well. So they have programs to accelerate resource and development through this knowledge transfer application and financial support. And the country is doing very well. So has been attracting a lot of the startups, and especially in Braga is the city where they have University of Minho there. So it's a community of 22,000 people around that university.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have some research facilities there. I think it's the third international lab that's there, because despite CERN, that's based in Geneva, and another one in Germany, Braga has a international nanotechnology lab there. So you have a lot of technology being developed there. And I think that this collaboration with university is very important now, right? Because we know all the lack of talent that we have, especially on AI at this moment. So I think when we have that understanding and proper combination of university, companies, and government is the place to go.
Yeah. So Braga, is that now north of Porto, is it?
Yes, it's northeast, just close to Porto. So it's the third largest city there in Portugal at this moment. It's close to Spain. It's on the northeast.
So when we think about AI, what does the competitive landscape look like at the moment, and what do you see it? We've heard a lot from Google and what they've done with DeepMind, with Microsoft's developing the whole cognitive services area and machine learning. We've seen Watson from an IBM perspective and the stories they're telling around there. And what's on the landscape from your perspective when it comes to AI, and if you like the competition between perhaps, let's say, the big players, so Google, IBM, AWS, and Microsoft?
Well, we've been seeing a lot of hype, right, around this team. I think we have to separate marketing from reality here at this moment. So in the current stage of the technology we have available, it's not something so easy yet, right, to implement on the scale side. So when we look, for example, to what IBM has been doing, I think that they made some mistakes on that side, because they overpromised what they could do, right? When you look to Google, I think that Google made a bet on open source. And so that's, to me, the right approach to do. And I think that Microsoft realized that. So I see today that such as Microsoft is totally different than Baumer's Microsoft, right? And so I think that Microsoft has all the tools to be very competitive on that landscape, because the context, right? So I think that the most important aspect of AI now is context, it's data, right? Data and context. And so as more tools you have to help companies to collect, to integrate, and to bring context to the models, the better position you will have. And I think Microsoft has a good set of tools and now a new vision to lead in that way.
Interesting. So from a practical perspective, how do you see Microsoft's AI story coming together?
Well, I think that it's important to understand the future, right? So what's the competition landscape in the next 10 years? So I think that what we see is of the leading companies, they will be aggressively competing from two different perspectives. The one is to improve the customer experience, right? Which is not easy at all. Because as customers, we have a lot of expectations on how difficult it is to do business with the companies today. So we are always expecting this Uber effect of a good experience with the companies from one side. And from another side is the automation of the processes behind, right? To provide those experiences with reducing your costs and leveraging the best experience possible. So this is a pretty difficult challenge for most part of the companies, and all and information and technology is key there, right? So I think when we look to what tools will be required to do this, it's not just one tool, it's a huge combination of technology, right? And that certainly we need to be connected to the business strategies. And I think when we look to everything that you need on that side is as internal, external data, right? Structured, non-structured, and you need a huge amount of tools to do that. Of course, that when you look to the big vendors, they are always trying to compete to be the only single one go-to vendor, right?
Yeah.
I think that's difficult at this moment. I have a tendency to see this in a more holistic perspective. But I think when, especially we look to Microsoft has to offer today, for example, open source, that change with Microsoft CNTK, right? They all the offers connected to Dynamics 365 and Cognitive Toolkit. So Microsoft has a lot of things to do this, right? I think Power Platform is the best vision Microsoft has now because of that, right? So I see in the future companies moving from batch to real time. And for being able to do that, the companies will need support and knowledge and tools, right? For being able to extract data from several different sources and to clean that data and to transform that data and information and context to fulfill all the strong and complex algorithms that will use that data to bring value to the company's strategy. So it's that alignment. It's not a simple task, right? So you need several tools to do that.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about from batch to real time, what impact do you think that's going to have on business?
Well, I think that we have to go to this maturity, right? Understanding of that. We see a lot of companies that IT and technology CIOs and now the technology leaders, they are not sitting in the table to discuss the company strategy. So in the past, I think that companies could do that, but not anymore, because the technology will be the driver of the innovation, right? And so I think that's the most important understanding now. I think that partners, internal IT, we need to understand that they have to move the mentality from the tools, right, to the how you do things, to the why, right? Why you have to do that, and you need to understand the business that you are, understand the role of all the new tools we'll have on that very competitive future, right?
Yeah. So if we just back up slightly and look at the understanding or the maturity that the market understands, we talked that there's a lot of marketing hype around AI, and then there's people that are kind of, let's say there's organizations that want to get on their AI journey and they don't know how to get started. And then if you ask a company, if you had a room full of people and said, who knows AI, everyone puts their hand up and everyone's doing it. Tell us a bit about the maturity of understanding that you think businesses are at in regards to AI, and then what your take on AI is.
Right. So in my presentations, I used to compare this as a race car, right? Path example. So for example, most part of the companies, when they read about the hype or they see the news, they basically the executive says to the IT, okay, take a look to AI and start something, right? And basically what they do is like cart. So you open a garage there and start playing with a cart. That's okay. I think most part of the companies are doing this today. Some developers are just playing with open source tools, right? Yeah, a cart is a car, right? So you can do a lot of things. But the problem here is that after you just play with that, the approach is trying to find a problem for the solutions and tools that you're creating, right? This is not serious, but it's a good start. When the companies move one step in this maturity, they say, okay, we are ready to do something. Let's start simple. I think that's the right recipe. It's like for GT, right, where you have stock cars. So you go to the market there and just connect what you have with the APIs that are available. So that's the role I see with Microsoft Power Platform, for example, right? Where you can have some modules that they are pre-built, and then you can use that and scale that. That's where you have IBM Watson and Microsoft Cognitive Services are there. That's okay, right? It's a good start because you can automate a lot of processes there. The focus is on customization, right? The problem here is that as a stock car, everybody has the same car, the same engine, right? The same project. This is where we have to understand where the leaders are. So the leaders, they are playing in the Formula One game. So in Formula One, you build everything from your own, right?
Yeah.
So you build the engine, you build the entire car, because just to be 1 millisecond in advantage of your competitor, you don't have enthusiasts working there. You have engineers, right, with deep knowledge and big pockets, so it's a different game. So what's important here is to understand in what stage the company is at that moment, and in what game the company will play, right? In this path of the maturity and understanding. There is no wrong approach on this, but I think that start simple is the best advice I can give.
Yeah. So, the big fanfare that we've seen in the market are our Watson and the Jeopardy scenarios, and then we've seen DeepMind, show it's been able to beat the Go champion, and then, a year later it's been able to multiply that. And I see that really fits into your F1 metaphor, is that's a very specific thing kind of to showcase those brands. But if we go down to your car and card example, how are businesses now, you mentioned connecting with APIs, what are other steps that they can take to get on the journey?
Yeah, so in that journey, I think that DARPA has a good categorization of AI, right, that I like the most. So they categorize that in 3 waves, okay? So that started with what's called expert systems. That was the first wave, right, where we have this descriptive approach. So when we look to Microsoft Power BI and all the analytics that we have today in terms of the focus on the reports and the numbers from the past, right? So that's the stage most part companies. And I think that here we have, especially robotic process automation, that's a good example, right? You just have to program the automation and you can do a lot of automation on that side. When we go to the current wave, is what we call statistical learning, right? In statistical learning, we stop looking to the past and look to the future with predictions. So here, for example, if in the first stage of automation, you can use our RPA just to do scripting tasks, right? With this statistical approach, you can try to predict what step you have to do, okay?
Right.
And then you can combine both on that role. This is what we have today, okay? What we have today, let's be clear, is just statistics. There's nothing like general purpose intelligence. So we are still a couple of years from that, probably a decade from a general purpose AI that can understand everything. So what we have today is something like an Excel under steroids.
Yeah.
It's the ability to do a huge amount of calculation. So you can do a lot of things with that. That's not wrong, right? We have some limitations, and that kind of models are totally dependent of the size, right, of the data you have and the quality of the data you have. This is why it's so tricky to just go to the supermarket and buy a box to make that works.
Yeah.
So, but that's an opportunity also, because there still need a demand for specialized services on that. And I think that's the space Microsoft partners should take a look, right? Because you need a lot of services to integrate and to clean that data, right? And to put that data in the proper perspective and how to automate this. When we look to those new technologies, especially prescriptive, the prescription or prescriptive, where you not just look to the future, but you just recommend what needs to do, that's a stage that we are just starting, right? Like the one you mentioned with DeepMind, right? Those technologies are just starting, but you need a huge amount of data to do that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't see many applications, concrete applications yet, but it's important, right? Because you need to have a pipeline of something that you always use, right, in the past, that you can still use in the first wave algorithms. They are important today. With the new algorithms that are available, and you can put on top of that, with something or new algorithms that will come in the next years, and that certainly will add a lot of value on that equation also.
So what role does really a traditional partner play? A traditional Microsoft partner, let's say they're a traditional SI, system integrator. What steps should they be doing to kind of potentially look at their dev resources and start skilling them in, and maybe is there a need for more math type experience with your developers? But also just how does a partner get underway on their journey so they can then turn around and offer customers solutions in this space, because the demand's only going to increase going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that partners have to scale up in the value chain, in my perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been talking to CIOs, right, and technology leaders for a long time, and now we have to press the elevator button and go to the top level and start learning the business of our customers to bring more value to that. I think that the secret of the new technologies that are coming is not the technology itself, are not the tools, right? We have to focus on the why the companies needs that, what's the connection of those technologies to the value, to the strategy of those companies. So I think that the most important competence is specialization on the customer's business. To have that. This is an arena that partners are not used. Partners are not used to do that, right? As tech guys, we just have a tendency to have a complex conversation, a lot of explanations on how we do things, and let's be honest, the C-level, they are not interested in that. So the discussion today should be focused around the why you need that, right, and what you can do with that technology. If you just have that kind of conversation with the C-level, the why is just a consequence, right? So we have to focus on the value to the businesses and the understanding of the impact of all those technologies to the customers. And then you can just go there to your legal of tools, right, and just connect all the pieces together. We don't need to explain to Microsoft partners how to be updated on technology, right? We have a huge amount of technology available, but that's another problem also. You have just to pick the right ones that will bring value and especially context to the customer's strategies.
So, a big part of being able to train an algorithm from a machine learning perspective is a lot of data. Where can companies start, not all companies are collecting lots of data, right? And their business might not have had that need. So what type of conversations would you have with customers when it comes to specifically talking about either internal or external data sets that they may or may not have?
Well, yeah, you're perfectly right. So I've been working with several projects at the same time with big companies, and that's the anchor for most part of AI projects right now, right? Where are the data, right? How to collect the data and how to process that huge amount of data that you need to just put the modules working properly. And again, we have to go back to that maturity model, right? And you can bet that only the few amount of the companies are prepared for that discussion. So I have examples where we built modules that gave a huge value to the companies in automation, but the companies were not ready just to import the data that we generated to them. They had no APIs available, right? Again, that's the opportunity for partners just to trying to explain this, right, and help the companies to move on that side. Because we are not just talking about a huge amount of data. We are talking that in real time. If we go back to that Formula One analogy, right? The companies that will be the winners on each industry, they will work in real time. So it's impossible to do that with the current mentality we have a client server and that stuff, right? So we have to look to new modules. There's a concept that I like. It's called transanalytics. Right, it's the combination of your transaction data in one single source of data where you have modules just filling the gaps and predicting connections between entities in real time. So the architecture for that is not simple, right? And I think that's the place we have to go. Very first step is starting doing the opposite. So what I recommend to Microsoft partners is go to your customers, understand the business, right? And then map all the entities and the processes and everything and start collecting that data. You don't need to know why you need that, but certainly you can bet you need. all data you need, all you can get, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we are talking about internal and external data, and structured and especially non-structured data. I've been working very deeply now on natural language processing, and man, there is a huge amount of context hidden, right? In emails and contracts and social media and everything. And that's an arena where most part of companies and partners, they are not used to work with. And the advantage to me would be that this is an area that will need skilled people, right, to understand this and to proper explain that, not only explain that to the customers itself, but to understand all the tools available to process that.
Yeah. So what about, like, even in recent times, I've come across many companies that still have very paper-intensive processes, whether they be checklists, whether they be any type of data capture is still being done on paper. And I just see that those companies are such a disadvantage for what's coming next, because they haven't even, started digitizing a lot of their data at the moment to put it into a format that then ultimately could be used for a whole lot of new scenarios. Do you see that AI is really going to be a differentiator between two businesses that, if you like, do the same thing or are in the same industry? The one that kind of adopts AI earlier will get a kind of competitive advantage?
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. For example, I made a presentation in Lean Summit in Portugal just a month ago, right? And I was talking with the Lean consultants and the Lean community. The Lean community, they are very focused on simplicity, right? On people and simplicity. So they have a tendency to look technology as complex, right? Why? That's our fault, because we have a different language, different complex conversation for them. So they prefer to stick papers on the wall.
Yeah.
And everything is paper oriented because their focus is just on the value, right? To do everything simple. So we have to understand that. And I was there just trying to promote AI to that group, right? And even Toyota, which is the company who started all of that.
Exactly, the godfather of it, yeah.
Yeah, can see the difference, because the level of automation that we are going to see in the companies in the next 10 years is crazy, right? We are going to automate everything. Everything that can be automated will be, certainly. So we have a huge amount of companies, right, that still does. You still have people who print emails, right?
Yeah, you're totally right.
A lot of reports, right, that has been done. So, for example, Boeing has a very good example on this, because when they started scanning, right, all the quality reports being made in their production facility, can you imagine how many information you have there hidden in the papers in different shifts? So what they did, they scanned all those reports, right? Put a module to understand what was there, right? What you can do with NLP, you just can detect entities on the text. You can detect the context of what's there. You can create clusters, right, of sentences and everything on this. So they train modules to just read all those huge amount of papers and reports on the quality. And we're able, for example, when a new problem arises, just a technician in the field can describe the problem. And the model will go to that knowledge base, right? And in 70% of the cases, they were able to find the same problem that happened and the solution that was done. But that's incredible. How many examples we can find in different industries and different companies on that, right?
Yeah. So in this case, you're saying all the technician did was describe the situation,
right,
or the problem, and then cognitive services, if you like, took that information, was able to interrogate a database of other situations the same thing had happened, and give the kind of the correct steps to take to address.
Yes, that's right.
Wow, that is amazing. And I can see the clear, competitive advantage. I'm interested, what are your thoughts on the future of sales when AI enters the picture? So, we've had CRM systems for 20 odd years now. How is the fundamentally sales and sales rhythms and sales engagements with customers, how in your mind do you see them changing in a world where, if you like, the salesperson now is supported with information that AI is producing for them. In other words, algorithms running on massive amount of data sets and kind of giving them really practically the next best move, but also the what steps to take around relationship building, things like that. What are your thoughts on sales and AI?
Interesting conversation on that side, right? I think that to me, the sales in the future will be more human.
More human.
Yeah. So you have. I don't like to be recognized as a salesperson, right? So you have to stick your conversation on the problem, right? I think that's a difference to me, because everybody will, of course, that we have a lot of information that we can collect, anticipate on the sales processes. But I think that the bet will be on the value that each one will present to the customer itself. So again, is our conversation on connecting your solutions to the customer's problems. I think that will be the arena where we have the competition, right? Of course, the CRM systems will evolve. You collect and connect a lot of information to be prepared for that conversation. But again, so the algorithms and models will just give you context, right? Will just give you the cards, and how to play that game with the customer will be the dependable of your value, of the value discussion that you're going to present to the customers itself. Right? I have a tendency to not sell anything to the customer. I prefer the customers buying from me.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, what does the future hold? If based on the research that you've done, where do you see we're going to be in the next 3 years, then let's say 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think that, as I told you, I think that in the short term, we are going to see a lot of companies using the pre-built models that will be available, right? So start simple, right? Just automations. We are going to see a lot of RPA, right? The robotic process automations, and helping companies to remove waste on their process and move on that automation on that side. Because clearly, every repetitive task, right, that can be done in an independent way can be automated. So just with that, you have a huge space for partners and technology companies to bring value to the customers, right? Because AI, I think that the goal of AI is not necessarily to create more intelligent experiences at this stage. It's just be slightly less stupid than you've been currently, right? And the customers will really like that. There's a guy from Ernst & Young, Michael Moore, who said that in the presentation that I like. So the companies have to start simple, right, on the basic automation. And then as soon as you said, you just collected the data, and you have a data lake, right, with all the internal and external structured and non-structured data that you collected, and you pass that phase to cleaning that data and understand that you have context there. You can start building your specific modules, right? And what you can do is that. So we have to understand that the modules, they won't replace 100% of the activities there. So anything that a human can do in less than a second or a minute, an algorithm can do, right? So you're not going to replace tactical or strategic decisions that takes more than 1 minute, right? So the proper use of the modules will be on all the tasks that any human can do very easily, right? But you need that in a very high level. So that would be the next stage. In terms of technology, I think that we're going to see a lot of graph databases taking place, not only SQL. It's the combination of SQL, NoSQL, but especially graph databases, right?
Graph databases.
Yeah, graph databases is a trend to me, because the companies will need to start building their knowledge graphs, exactly like Google does, right? For the specific businesses, and trying to understand the context, where they are, and how you connect your entities from where the information comes from, and all that conversation. So that's the right path to have modules that you can explain, right? Because today it's not easy in some verticals where it's very important to understand why the module predicted that. Is very complex, right? You cannot explain. You cannot find a very good answer for that. You just have to believe.
Yeah.
So the next wave, that will be the contextual adaptation that DARPA predicted. That's more close to the way our brains work. I think that will be more close to graph embeddings and new algorithms and that stuff that we're going to see in the next 10 years to me. But all of that will be in that real-time scenario, right?
So Microsoft's been running for some years now, like graph databases around O365, right? Specifically telemetry data being ingested and habits and behaviors as part of that. And the extension of that, particularly around email data, you've already touched on, has been a lot of opportunity to mine that. There's the social graph. What other applications can businesses, when you say they need to go build graph databases, what are you thinking about?
Well, Microsoft had that graph, right? The vision to connecting, especially Office on this, right? That's different of what we are talking here. I think that's important, right? Because the graph vision Microsoft is connecting Word, Excel, and all the Office tools together. Especially now with Power Platform, that's I think it's the ultimate version of that vision, right? That's perfect on the way you collect data. The graph that we are talking here is a different concept. So a graph is not a chart, right?
No.
It's a type of database where you basically describe entities and the relationship between entities. And most part of those relationships are today based on emails, for example, as you said. So I think there is a huge space of collecting those non-structured data, right? And understanding the connections between entities. That's where the graph databases will help a lot. Because I think that the models will be used to detect connections, to strengthen the connections between entities, right? And to put some values on that connection. So this is where the graph databases are strong. And then you can use algorithms like, for example, you have a Waze or Google Maps algorithm, right, who navigates to the roads and streets. You're going to have those first wave algorithms that navigates to that graph to understand the right path or the right connection between one entity and another. So that's the type of contribution that the graph database can does. Because usually on graph databases, as it is different than SQL, right? It is a declarative database. So you basically ask what you need.
Yeah.
You don't need to there are no joins or there are no indexes, right? So you just ask you what you need, and the algorithm will find the connection and bring you back. So that's a game changer.
Yeah. So it's much more real time in the way that is working, as in understanding how one data set is related to another?
Yes, right. Because consider that you don't need to explain to the algorithm how to find the connections. What's the problem of SQL databases? You need to do joins. So, but if you have an evolving database, right, with new entities that you didn't have before, so you have to do that join, right? You have the information.
Yeah.
In a graph database, it's different. You just ask me, tell me the connections between the connections around this entity here, and if you just have a new connection today, the data will be there. That's changed completely the perspective on the way you structure the data and the way you navigate to the context. And in this real-time challenge. And this is why I think that graph database will have a huge impact on the value for that.
Yeah, very interesting. I definitely have a lot to learn there. So, I started my AI journey kind of learning. I read a book called The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly, who he started the Wired magazine. He was the chief editor of Wired magazine. And he talks a lot about the 12 technologies that are going to change our future. And of course, AI is, at the top of that list. And he talks a lot about that the future will involve basically, and these are his words, platforms and flows. And we will ultimately be building everything on a limited set of platforms that are interconnected and that data flows. And he goes on to predict by 2050 that even AI and biology would have started linking a lot together, and that any part of our body would ultimately be able to be printed in some form. From there, that kind of led me into Sapiens and Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which really started opening my eyes up. And now I'm reading Ray Kurzweil's book, How to Create a Mind, and one you recommended on intelligence. Is there a need for business folks, for people working in the AI area that are kind of focused on the technology to really understand, if you like, what's happening behind all this, kind of what's the, particularly the how to create a mind is just intriguing, the understanding of how neural pathways work and then how that really affects the creation of algorithms, if you like, then just going to code and starting to build things. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think that we have to separate what is research, right? Deep research on that side from the practical daily world where companies are. Yeah, we discussed about on intelligence from Jeff Hawkins, right? I'm a pretty big fan of Jeff Hawkins' mentality and approach, because he says that what we have today is not AI, right? It's not intelligence at all, and I think that he's right. But of course, that in the evolution that we see, right, and the speed of the evolution and how the great things that the tools are doing, we can predict that we are going to decode, right, the neocortex in, I don't know, right, how many years we are going to, but it's inevitable. We are going to do that, right? This is why we need some research mentality companies or for groups that are going in that side. I don't think that a regular company needs to be worried on that. You don't need to understand all the complexities behind algorithms on that side. And then I'd like to go back to the discussion that we had before. I think that if you want to do this, that's great, right? It's important. So I think that the world needs more software engineers and neuroscientists working together and trying to build better algorithms. But we are not using not even 10% of what we have today.
Yeah.
And so I think that we can make a huge difference on the company's productivity, right? And the results if we just use what we have today. And there is a interesting anonymous quote that I like, is that in the Stone Age was marked by man's clever use of crude tools. But the information age today, it has been marked by man's crude use of clever tools. So I think that most part of the companies, I think that have to just go there, right? Take what is mature right now and start using and start basics. That's to me the opportunity for partners is linking the current stage of maturity of the businesses with the available technology today and start simple, right? Doing automations in the level that are there. But it's important to understand what you have, right, on the guts and behind the scenes. Just to understand from where the research is moving ahead. Yeah, and I think that everything is going to cloud. Everything is going to, this lean orientation, this lean philosophy on the way to build things, on this holistic perspective that we are going to have a lot of different apps working together and collecting data and saving data, right? And in that side, it would be impossible to one single company to bring all the tools, all the context, all the perspective for all the industries and companies and sizes and partners, right? So I think that every company needs to understand where they are, what game they want to play, right? What are the tools available, and understand the deeper contribution and where the value is, right?
Well, it's been so good talking to you, and I feel like I could talk on about AI for hours, but I just always like to wrap up with some quick fire questions. And so let's go through these. What's the best piece of advice you've received around your career?
Well, at the beginning of my ERP career, I started working with trouble projects, right? That's a good place to be, because I was not the one who did the sale. So someone lied, right, and made promises, and then I was the one that went there and just tell the truth.
Yeah.
So I worked with a fantastic person who was Pam Blaze from Microsoft on trouble projects, and I learned a lot from her, and she always said to me, "Moacyr, set proper expectations at the beginning of any project." Yeah. Right. And I use that advice in everything that I do, right, at the beginning. So I use that when I was just signing a contract. I always discuss everything and set proper expectation on what can go wrong, what works, what doesn't work, what's the role of each one, right? Because there is no one single technology project that's not made in four hands, right? So it's very important to me, and that's one of the principles I've been using a lot.
I like it. What's one productivity tool you use every day?
Well, I do a lot of research, right? I read a lot of material, so I collect. I have to catalog and to concentrate any piece of information that I can collect everywhere. Mm-hmm. I have my pipeline for doing this, and I use Evernote for that. I prefer, right? Of course, Microsoft has OneNote, but I prefer the way Evernote does that, right? So I use that a lot. My entire life is there, honestly.
I can't wait till I can give my Evernote over to an AI that can understand I think I've had Evernote since the day it, pretty much started. And I've got thousands and thousands of documents and things in there. Basically, anything that I thought I might need one day, it's gone in there.
Yeah, so I have everything there. So everything that I collect, I think, I may use this in a presentation. Okay, let's put that. I may use this and that. So that's solved my problem of, I get that, but I can't remember from where. Because you can receive a lot of information from email, from tips, from links, and everywhere, right? So I really had to find a way to concentrate everything in one single place.
Yeah. What's the one book you would recommend to people at the moment?
At this moment, it's funny because at this moment I'm reading a very old book. It's How to Lie with Statistics from Darren Huff. It's a book from, I think, 40s, right? But it's pretty current with the challenges today. But there is another one that's not so new, but it's The Master Algorithm from Pedro Domingos. Mm-hmm. I recommend, besides the On Intelligence from Jeff Hawkins that we discussed before. Yeah.
Excellent. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Despite of this craziness of intense research, I like photography.
Nice.
Yeah. So I do a lot of travel. So for every new place I go, I like to just take 1 or 2 days to walk around and try to use an alternative way to explore creativity, right? And just look at the world in a different perspective. So I really like that. If I was not working with technology and AI, I think that photography would be something I would like to do.
Nice. So is your focus on landscapes, or do you do portraiture work as well?
Landscapes. I don't like usually to just take pictures of people, but I just like to just see nature, especially in black white. I like the black white nature and landscapes. I like that. Right?
Excellent. Is there anyone you'd recommend as a guest on a future show?
At this moment, oh my God, a lot of people that I like, right?
Something that would appeal to Microsoft partners and consultants.
Steve Guggenheimer would be a nice guy, right? From Microsoft.
So do you know what's funny about that? Is that I've already interviewed him and it's about to go live in the next week or so. Yeah. Because I think that it's important to just take Microsoft perspective right on AI. I think it's good. He's a nice guy. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I didn't talk to him about AI. I talked to him about ISV because it's another area he's taken over. But yeah, it's very valid. It would be interesting to drill into a conversation with him around AI. I know he's worked in that space with Microsoft for some time. Moacyr, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. If people want to connect with you, do you publish anything online? Can they connect or see your works online at all?
Yeah, no, I'm in terms of that, I have my LinkedIn, right? So I just can send you the link and you can just publish that. But I'm really doing everything undercover, right? In stealth mode. But yeah, I can connect with anyone interested on discussions on AI. I really like that. And it's a conversation that we can have a full day on that side. So I'm very passionate on that and work a lot of hours per day and weekends because this is something really intriguing in the future. So I can connect and talk to anyone interested on that using LinkedIn.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today on the Dynamics 365 show. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. Full show notes for this episode are at nz365guy.com/109. I'm trying out something new, and that is live streaming. If you want to chat with Steve Mordew and myself on air, please check us out each Wednesday on YouTube at youtube.com/NZ365Guy. Bye for now.